The Gothic games still hold a passionate fanbase, especially in Europe, where they were essentially the Morrowind for Europeans. Their worlds were harsh, their freedom unforgiving, and every ounce of power had to be earned through grit, not guidance. Despite rough edges, Gothic pioneered systems far ahead of its time, living NPC schedules, unscaled exploration, meaningful factions, reactive AI, brutal progression, dense world design, and morally grounded storytelling. Though it never took off with the mainstream audience and was discontinued in 2006, its innovations shaped modern RPGs, from Oblivion and Dark Souls to The Witcher 3, Fallout New Vegas, and even Kingdom Come. With no official sequels, fans began creating their own successors, projects like Of Ash and Steel and Knight's Path. Today, I'm speaking with the developer of one of the most ambitious projects of them, Sword Hero. Built entirely by one person, Sword Hero aims to capture Gothic spirit with a seamless open world, reactive NPC routines, dangerous biomes, visible character damage, branching quests, deep factions, and immersive RPG systems. I sat down with its creator, Csaba, to talk about how he's bringing this vision to life. If you end up enjoying this interview and want to see more like it, please check the interview playlist in the description, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Just for anyone who doesn't know what the game is, what Sword Hero is, can you just give a brief breakdown of who you are and what the game is for someone who's never heard of it before?
Overall, Sword Hero is going to be an open world RPG that closely follows design principles that were more prominent in the early 2000s. Not lost entirely, of course, because we have some really good examples as of late, like Kingdom Come Deliverance is a very good recent example of it.
And if you could just sort of explain how the world is structured. So, like, is it open world? Is it create your own path? Is it like, what would you compare it to?
Well, I'd compare the overall openness of the world and level design overall to Gothic 2 and 1, for instance. Both in scale and the feeling of it, because in both those games there was a sense of openness to it, like there weren't any invisible walls, for instance, but the environment itself and the natural features of the land were used to sort of guide player experience. So the island itself won't have like invisible walls or anything. It's just that the same will be applied here as well, in a sense that the environment will sort of drive player experience at first. So not always walls, but for example, lest you go alongside the ridge, for example, that at the beginning of the game you wouldn't be able to jump down into that ridge without losing both your legs, for example. So yeah, things like that. And of course with enemy placement, because even around the first area of the game, there will be instances where you could go in there physically, like there is no glowing wall or anything stopping you. It's just that a high-level enemy is placed deliberately there to sort of challenge you and your character in a way that to sort of assure that you're ready for that area which lies behind the enemy.
And it's an RPG from what I've seen. Like, can you just quickly touch on some of those elements, RPG, just for someone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so in Sword Hero, what I'm aiming for is pretty much no hands-held experience, in a way that you're free to go and do whatever you want from the first minute. So even if from a previous playthrough you might be knowing what you need to do, then you would be allowed to go and attempt that. There just wouldn't be too high chances of that succeeding, because your character is not really there yet. But otherwise from that, I want really big amount of interactivity with the world overall. So for example, one recurring thing now from the demo is that people are trying to place pieces of meat onto the brazier to cook it. And that's funny, because that's pretty much how cooking will work in the game. And in other ways, like just as a nod to games like Arx Fatalis, for example, you will be able to mix water and flour, and then that you would get dough, and you place that dough on a hot surface, and you would see it rise and get baked into a bread.
That's awesome. So we got cooking. I believe there's lock picking. What other aspects are there in there, like that you can interact with the world?
Well, reading, there will be mini games in, for example, taverns. For example, we already have planned uh, a dice game, which is technically a variant of Liar's Dice. You might remember it from Red Dead Redemption. So it's a very addictive game, and I'd like to have some facet of it in Sword Hero as well. It's not exactly like for the gambling part, but still it's an interesting thing because, for example, games like Fable, like the game's not a gambling simulator, but it had some, for the second installment, some awesome mini games which would just get you sucked in for hours.
And from what I've researched, it appears to be a real living world, like how some games, like I think Gothic was very much like this. Kingdom Come Deliverance, the same. I've heard that NPCs will remember the character's actions. Apparently, there's going to be a crime wanted system. There will be factions. Can you just sort of give me a couple or just one example of like how a player could react and the long term consequences?
The whole core of this routine system is not something novel or anything like that. It's just a list of things the NPCs do at certain given amounts of time during the day. For example, this NPC knows that he should be sleeping from 8 p.m. to 6 in the morning, then go and drink and eat, and then go to work and stuff like that. A video I've put up lately, just this short, I've been talking about this thing I call the tragedy event, which would be a sort of list for each NPC. There would be, a default set of tragedies. For example, I don't know, if he loses an arm or a leg or something, then that would be triggered. But it could also be switched out for more interesting things. For example, if it fits the narrative. For example, there's a guy who's very obsessed about his family heirloom, which is like a super expensive vase or whatever. Then I would just slot in that if the vase's health would reach 0, you break the vase, or it breaks for whatever reason, then it would trigger that guy's tragedy event. At that point, this whole daily routine, which is stored in a data structure called a scriptable object, would just get switched out for a new one, which has a different set of, sort of commands for that day. For example, that guy was before, I don't know, working at the harbor, just, I don't know, holding boxes and things like that. He was an upstanding guy. Then you break his vase, and then from that point on, he's gonna be a drunkard, for example. He's gonna spend all his day in the tavern, all depressed, just puking, sleeping in ditches and whatever, because he completely got depressed because the vase was broken. And to sort of put a spin on all this, in each playthrough there would be sort of collection of special routines, which could be more interesting things. And at any point, if an NPC's tragedy event would be triggered, then there would be a very little chance that they can, instead of their default tragedy routine, they would pick one from this bucket, sort of. And these would include more special events, like, for example, you are a blacksmith, or you have a blacksmith, and you killed his son or wife or whatever for whatever reason. Then let's say that when the hour turns from this day to the next day, and you're not around, so it sort of happens behind the scenes. But his daily routine would be switched out for a new one, which would include him getting some cool gear, his stats being swapped out for higher stats, him getting a cool prosthetic or whatever. And then his daily routine wouldn't be that he gets up in the morning and starts, hammering at swords and stopping sometimes to smoke or whatever. But he's going to be walking around the major roads of the island with his new cool gear, trying to find you and take revenge.
How does decision making play a role, and how have you managed to balance both quality and obviously having branching paths at the same time?
A big thing I wanted to achieve with the whole narrative progression of Sword Hero was the ability to have multiple paths for any quest, whichever insignificant it would be, no matter. And more importantly, the ability to kill any NPC at any time, even if they are integral to the quest itself. And this is, as proven initially, from the design standpoint, a bit of a challenge because, understandably, what are you going to do at that point? The guy who you were supposed to help is dead for whatever reason. So then I came up with these sort of fallback situations. So at that point, when each quest has a list of NPCs who are integral to the completion of the quest, for either that you have to talk with them at one point or whatever, that at that point the quest shifts towards a different path, but sort of logged into this as well. So instead of opting for something like quest failed or whatever, you get nothing. You instead get a different finishable path, which don't have anything to do with any NPCs. Well, unless you count the talking necklace as an NPC, that is, because I haven't really gone into this aside from that little tease in the trailer itself, but that little necklace your character is wearing is going to be very integral to the story. And if you do certain evil stuff, then that necklace is going to come and give its 2 cents. And it's going to be this sort of fallback path. So even if you eradicate the entire island somehow, which would obviously lock you into the crazy killer path or whatever people are gonna be calling it, you'd have that necklace as your companion technically. So I'm not gonna say what the necklace is going to be yet, but just that it can sort of talk with the main character.
Can you just give a quick breakdown of what makes the combat special in this game?
It's not something that hasn't been delivered before. For example, it's very similar to what you could be doing in the Search series, for example, but not that Souls-like kind of approach. Because I'm trying to differentiate Sword Hero from Souls-like. So it's I wouldn't say that it's a Souls-like, and I'm trying to drive this home even by not including a stamina system, even though it will, magically solve a lot of issues, but at the same time, it produces issues as well. For example, it just sort of adds an artificial difficulty to some things, which I never really clicked with. Like of course, they can be absolutely awesome as hell, because I really love Elden Ring too, but it's not what I'm going for. And with the limb system, I'm trying to push it a bit further as well. As first, it was just inspired by how, in, for example, Blade of Darkness, enemies, different body parts get more bloodied and stuff, but it wasn't really separated to limbs, only just the visual. So, for example, if you hit the arm of a creature there for many times, then when you kill it, its arm would fly off. But as far as I know, their health was a single central health, regardless of the visual looking part of limbs. And so it started like this. Then I originally, in the first iteration of Sword Hero, the armors were visually breaking off enemies. So armor sort of acted like a second health bar, but it was birthing a lot of issues. It's it's not really a fun mechanic to, you get cool armor, congratulations, and 5 minutes later something comes and breaks it off of you, even if it's not disappearing magically into thin air. So you could have still repaired it or anything like that, but these systems are very controversial, especially nowadays. So I shifted towards a more traditional approach where each armor piece provides damage reduction, basically. But the difference is that it provides it for each body part separately. And, as the design matured a bit, some monsters came to be which have special body parts, not exactly limbs, I don't know if a tail is a limb, at least. But if you destroy that specific limb, then while the creature is alive, then you'd get a special item, for example. Or a monster would be invincible until you find that specific body part in which some worm or whatever, lives and keeps that creature invincible, and you destroy that limb with the worm in it, then you can kill the creature itself.
To go over difficulty, we've seen games like Gothic in particular. The world sort of, it's very challenging, and Kingdom Come Deliverance is the same. It starts you weak, but then the feeling of becoming stronger is more impactful. How have you managed to balance that, making sure that the game is challenging, but not too challenging in that it would be off-putting?
In a similar way that it has been solved by Gothic 2 and some other games since then, Kingdom Come in this sense might not be the best example, but even there, you can visually see on an enemy if they're going to be challenging or not. Like, they have cool armor, nice sword, and whatever. So, yeah, this is not just your ordinary bandit. This is some disgruntled noble or whatever who's turned to banditry. So the same is going to be here as well, in terms of humans at least. And also because, I have things in place, like, for example, the three main attributes, strength, dexterity, and arcane, are impacting your character's look visually, and not just your character, but every NPC. So strength causes your character to be bulkier, dexterity makes your muscles more defined, and arcane makes your eyes glow. So if a guy who looks like, a balloon animal with glowing eyes comes at you in the main road, then it might not be the best idea to attack him if you're just a level 4 nobody. So, and also like the armors, because, both in volume and overall the look of armors, gets more, bigger, bulkier, and more badass looking as it progresses. So it's a very important aspect. You need to be able to gauge the opponent's power level sort of from a glance from far. And the same is the same for animals as well. So if I'd put all the animals and monsters in the game next to each other, then from the tiniest juvenile gnawer, which is like this baby mole, which are in the demo as well, that would be like the smallest, and we'd have like, just some overall outlandish stuff at the end, and it would grow steadily. Visible scale of monsters directly correlate to their strength. So if you can see an enemy that's I don't know, half the size of a tree, then you might know, oh yeah, it's probably badass. I shouldn't go there. The second thing I use to sort of drive this home is that each monster has their own sort of habitat biome, in a sense. So, for example, you won't see wolves, for example, roaming the paths or the meadows, the nice green areas. Those are relatively safe. Those are the home of smaller things like gnawers, for example. But if you go inside the trees, the forests, then it will quickly change, because you would know that once you're in the forest, then you'd be bound to meet wolves and other more nefarious things that aren't available, in a sense, in the meadow, unless they follow a gnawer outside or something like that. But generally, each biome has their own set of creatures.
Do you want to say anything about the story or the factions at this point? Reputation system, if there is one.
Well, yeah, the reputation system is well, it's wrong to call it like that. I think because it's not really that. So the hostility between factions is going to be driven by the story. Kenshi, was a sandbox game. It was very open all throughout. But in Sword Hero, it's more story-driven in a way. So up until a certain point in the game, there's a sort of pact between the three factions, so in a way that they won't attack each other on sight and similar, but that can change quickly. But for example, you as the player come into the picture as an outsider, so you're not part of either faction. You can work towards earning their favors, etc., and then you can join them or not if you choose the hard path by being alone, which is understandably much harder because the factions provide gear and the knowledge you otherwise wouldn't be able to attain. Or well, the prosthetics themselves are a good example. So in other games such as Fable and Wilderness, for example, there are similar systems, and pretty much what they are achieving, what I want to achieve as well with Sword Hero, that after a while, you play the game for a 20-hour or maybe 30 hours or similar, you would be account by a character that's not kind of the same character you started your game with. They look different. For example, in Wilderness, they might have lost one of their limbs, which got replaced magically or whatever. They got a bit wrinklier due to the experiences they've been through. And the same is true for Fable as well. You got your scars, you get bigger and whatever. And I think that this gives a very great layer to storytelling in these games, that you don't even have to say a single word or read anything. You just look at your character and then you see that missing limb and you remember how your character lost it. You see that scar and you know which battle that scar, that that there was this enemy which you shouldn't have fought, but you decided that, well, whatever, I'll try it. And you tried it and you managed to defeat it, but just in the nick of time, and you got this serious scar from it or whatever. And these are the things that make each playthrough even more different for players themselves, because then players can just sort of compare their characters, and just I just feel like it's a very awesome thing that both these examples, like the Fables and Wilderness, is very awesome for that. Even though the characters themselves go through similar paths as the game itself is the same, they end up with so vastly different characters despite not doing anything special, just what they do anyways.
In terms of like quest design, will it be main quest, side quests? If so, how many?
Not much by any sense, because well, for one thing, I'm alone, and Sword Hero just so I'm more looking for depth instead of quantity. But in this sense, each sort of bigger chapter, if you look at the game in terms of chapters, are going to be probably around 10 bigger, more side quests with more steps to them. But these also range from more involved ones to simpler ones. As a simple example from the first part of the game, which is a sort of introductory to the game's world lore systems and whatever, to get accustomed to it. About an hour or two in the game, you will reach the first village, which is Ironshire. So it's a sort of contested area. None of the three factions has control over it, but it will be sort of your actions that decide which side the scale tips. And in here, one of the first guys you would meet is a guy who locked himself out of his hut. and he's most of the day he's just gonna be sitting in front of his hut on a bench, just waiting for someone. The quest's name is gonna be logged out, and it's going to be a very down-to-earth quest. Like, it's literally just a guy who locked himself out of his hut. Point of the quest is to help this guy just get inside his hut, and he offers something in return. So it's not nothing novel or anything, but it's more like the way I would like to players to try and approach it. So, for example, this guy is notorious for his drinking habits. So, for example, if you go to the tavern, then the tavern owner would mention this guy to you if you haven't yet met him. And he would also mention that this guy is notorious for drinking and doing crazy things like going outside the town walls and being off the bridge. So this is going to be like an important point later on. And because the thing is that the guy, while being drunk, he was being off the bridge and probably dropped his key. And that's going to be the most straightforward, to get into his hut. If you go below the bridge and you go into the river at that point, then at the bottom of the river you will find his key. But I don't expect most players to do this. So there are other options as well. People who played the earlier versions of the demo might remember that the door could be broken down either by strength or using things like the cauldrons, which are the bombs or whatever. So that's an option as well if you just straight out destroy that guy's door. But he's obviously not going to be too happy about it. And then you would only get the XP reward, but he wouldn't give you the gold he promised you. So that's an option as well. Another option is that if by that time you know lockpicking, then you can just straight up pick his lock and then just let him in. But at that point, you may not yet necessarily have the lockpicking, because it will have some prerequisites sort of to get into that circle of guys who can teach you lockpicking. And the third one is a bit more exotic in a way, which also turns into a sort of recurring theme that's going to be in quests, is that even in the demo you might have seen these bugs crawling around on the ground. And then the thing is that for a previous quest, which you could or could have done by this point, one of the rewards are 3 transform into mailbag scrolls. And then if you follow the noise the bugs make and you go outside the wall, then you would see this group of little mailbags on the ground, and next to them is a healthily sized crack on the wall. And if you transform into a bug, you can go through that hole and you will find yourself inside this guy's house. Then you turn back and you can unlock it from the inside. And so this would be the third way you can solve this quest. So yeah, this is just the most rudimentary example, because this is literally a guy locked out of his house. But yeah, so this is the level of options I'd like to offer players, is that the important thing is that one path would always be just straight up wrong, like if anyone just decides to just go at it, then just, for example, here as well, you can just break down the door, but it offers lower rewards. But this would be an option later as well, if you wouldn't like to, sweet talk your way out of situations, or you wouldn't be the sneaky type, or things like that, then just pulling out your sword is always going to be an option.
Will there be voice acting in the game, or is it reading?
Yeah, so the voice acting is obviously a very expensive thing. So for right now, the default I'm going by is that only the parks of NPCs are going to be voiced, just like in the arena demo. For example, you can hear that, the guy is going to shout at you if you, unsheath your sword in front of him, or you steal or whatever. But the actual dialogues by default won't be voiced. This is another aspect where the upcoming Kickstarter might help out, depending, whether it succeeds, how it succeeds, similar, because obviously at this level, it would be a pretty big undertaking to get full voice acting, for all characters, even if it's, like as was usual, like the same guy is voicing 15 different characters, which honestly, it would be totally fine by me. But still, that as well would be a pretty big investment.
About you, real quick. So, do you work alone, and is it just you?
Yeah, yeah, it's just me. I've been going at it for quite a while now, but well, this iteration of Sword Hero is almost around 2 years at this point. But that number might seem a bit tricky, because the things I've been showing, for example, in the trailer or the demo, are not the full set of features that are already done. For example, I wouldn't be able to put, for example, character progression in a meaningful way, or sleeping, or whatever in a combat arena demo, because the demo's goal was ultimately to gather more feedback on the combat so I can improve it, because I feel like many great RPGs would be otherwise, like absolute perfect games, but then sadly end up with very subpar combat systems.
So you work by yourself. You do work
Yes.
as well, right? Like you have a job. The
Yeah.
ambition of this game is it's massive, right? What you're trying, like everything you're putting in this game, like for one person, it's incredible. I mean, why do it like this? Why be so ambitious? Like some people would just make a simple game. You're here trying to do so much by yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
why?
Well, it all stems from, I guess, that there was this game I really wanted to play, but it didn't exist, and this actually pretty much goes back to how I started out, actually, because by original I was a cook, so just an ordinary line cook up until COVID hit, and then I was like, the restaurant closed due to COVID, and I was like, all right, what now? Yeah, so I decided that for the first time in my life, I can try what I would like to do, and I'm not going to let anyone tell me that it's an incredibly stupid idea or outright impossible. Yeah, it definitely took some attempts and a good amount of hardships for in the first few years of this, because understandably, if you'd be a kid, without anything, and you'd decide that in your free time you're going to, watch YouTube videos to learn programming and anything like that. That's obviously different than when you're doing it as an adult. But ultimately, it worked out pretty well. Like, since then, I've had plenty of opportunities to learn from people who are obviously, smarter than me, better than me, and all as part of my job as well.
Did you have any experience in coding for video games prior to COVID?
No, not at all. So this was pretty much my whole thing was stopping at using level editors for games, and that's pretty much it. And it didn't start. If for example, if it's probably other self-taught programmers know as well that you start out by doing things like, I don't know, a pinball game or a side scroller or whatever. But as months pass, and if you don't give up, then you slowly find yourself deviating from these guides and tutorials, and then slowly you find yourself finding that you're not even following the thing, and then slowly you're there and doing it. I guess it's like bicycle in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you notice that, holy crap, no one's holding my bicycle and I haven't fallen yet. And
It's incredible. That is an incredible story because I've seen the game and like That's an incredible story. That is just incredible that you didn't know how to code, and then in 5 years, look at what you've done. Like that's the story, man. That's amazing.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
What is the roadmap? Like, what is your goal? When do you plan on releasing the next demo? When do you want it? When do you think it'll be finished? Like, what's the roadmap?
Yeah, well, this is a very difficult question, especially until we know whether the Kickstarter would even succeed. But regardless of that, um, so currently the outlook is that I'm currently working on the first alpha, which is going to include the first part of the map, this town, Ironshire, and there's some secrets and a handful of quests and whatever, and the core gameplay systems and things that weren't in the demo, for example, like character customization, progression, and other things like that, uh, which would overall tie this open world experience together. So that will be the first step that the Kickstarter is going to start in January by our current plans. And right after the Kickstarter ends, people with access to the alpha will get the alpha right away, and they would be able to play it right away when the demo itself is going to remain the arena demo, just in an updated version. So I'm going to add some highly requested features like infinite mode, for example, custom battles, NPC battles, and other things like that that people would like to, just get a bit more enjoyment out of it.
First of all, what is the Kickstarter goal? What will it be used for? And what else? Like, how can people help you? If someone saw the project and wanted to help.
So with the Kickstarter, my main goals would be to elevate Sword Hero, because since day one I've been fully prepared that if needed I can finish this alone. But there are obviously gaps in my set of skills that other people can help me fill these gaps. For example, I could get access to more animations, because animations are really not my forte, and I need to work with a talented animator to, for example, have things that many people would like. For example, new weapon types, flashier skills, nicer cutscenes, things like that. Which would be needed. The other thing, which is a pretty big part of the overall atmosphere of the game, is music. So I would, be working with a composer who can help me, and other things like that. Now, overall, even these things, just these two things, in in my current budget of zero, is pretty big things. So I wouldn't even dare dream it bigger than this. Like, this would be the first stepping stone of Sword Hero. But obviously, if for whatever miraculous reason, so Sword Hero can grow a bit, in that case, I would be prepared with other stretch goals which could elevate the experience further. For example, the voiceovers we've been discussing previously. But that alone is a very expensive thing, like magnitudes bigger than whatever previously, because the voiceover, aside from because the animator as well and the composer as well, they are one person. But the voiceover, it's probably either a team or a dedicated studio or similar. That's a magnitude bigger than these things. So it's probably going to be on the higher end of the scale. So I definitely the project can live without it, but it could really, I think, put the last missing piece in picture.
And that brings our interview to an end. I want to thank Csaba for taking the time to speak with me and wish him good luck with Sword Heroes development. As a fan of the Gothic series, this looks like my dream game. In the description you'll find all the links to support Sword Hero and follow the work. If you enjoyed this interview, please give the video a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Finally, if you want to see more interviews like this, please check out the interview playlist linked in the description. Thank you for watching. Av out.